Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and this is Should Have Listened to My Mother. I've been told on many occasions how writing is therapeutic, and you may already know that. I imagine that's why so many people journal. They keep their deepest and cherished secrets, as well as their darkest secrets. They write it all down onto the open page, with not revealing anything to anyone but themselves. Kind of cool when you think about it. You can free yourself without anyone else knowing what you've just discovered or uncovered. I think I started a journal or notebook once or twice, but I didn't keep it up. I was probably more fearful that someone would find it and read it, as I guess everybody has that same fear. But I do believe in the healing power of writing, as in transformational writing or therapeutic poetry, where you truly express yourself with honesty and integrity, allowing the truths to come out. Again, instead of keeping sorrow, pain, stress, anger, even happiness and achievement and joy bottled up inside, free it by putting it down on paper. My second grade teacher introduced me to Robert Frost and his classic poem, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, and even to this day I still remember the poem. That's decades later. That's the only poem. It's the only thing I know about poetry, really. But it definitely has made a lasting impression on me, clearly. Rich Fireman, my guest, is a poet and author and has been writing for over 50 years. In 2009, he contributed a chapter to the book Writing Away the Demons, a compendium of 13 writers' stories of how each of them used writing to deal with life crises, and it's edited by poetry therapist Dr. Sherry Ryder. Rich's chapter dealt with his mom's Alzheimer's during the last 5 years of her life and how he used his writing to help cope with its traumatizing effect. And December 22 will be the release of his latest book, poetry called Constellations. Hi, Rich Fireman. It's a pleasure to have you on Should Have Listened to My Mother.
Hi, Jackie. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
It's very impressive that you've been writing for 50 years or more. I know that you...
Fortunately, it's not the one piece.
And now Rich is going to read from his...
So it's a long sentence.
Rich is going to, in a little bit, he's going to read some of the poetry pieces that he wrote related to his mom. But I always like to begin. You are the son of whom? Tell us your mom's name, please, Rich.
Okay. Well, she was born originally Claire Resnick in New York City. When she married my father, it became Claire Fireman. And then when she remarried after my father passed, became Claire Wilk. And then he passed in, I believe, 1996. And that's when she had her breakdown. The Alzheimer's took over, and she passed in 2001. The last 5 years of her life, she was struggling with that. And that's what the chapter that I wrote in the book is about, because it was through my writing, which I was doing anyway, but it was an invaluable tool to help me deal with the trauma of my mother's passing.
Okay. And she grew up where, your mom?
In New York City.
Where is her family originally from? What is her heritage, her lineage?
Her parents were from the Ukraine, actually. They came over, I guess, over 100 years ago. They had a farm not too far from here in Colts Neck, New Jersey.
Was your mom born in Ukraine or was she born here?
No, she was born in the United States. And she lived to the age of 81.
And tell me what kind of a girl she was. Was she mischievous? Was she a good girl?
No, I would not call her mischievous. I would call her with me. She talked quite a bit. I think with others she kept a lot inside. She was a very nervous person. She had one brother who she did not get along with. There was a lot of sibling rivalry. And he was literally a rocket scientist. He worked for, I believe it was Lockheed. And they were, like oil and water. They did not mix.
Were they the only two siblings?
Yes, they were.
And this is the older brother?
Yes.
So you mentioned they eventually bought a farm, but where did she grow up?
She grew up in New York, in Brooklyn, I believe.
Did she get to go to school as a young girl, or did she have to work? Do you know much about your mom's heritage?
I don't know too much. She didn't like to talk too much about it. She was very stressed about it.
She was stressed about it.
Mm-hmm.
How old was your mom when she got married?
She was 30.
Wow, that's great for that generation, right? That's considered, I hate to use the word old. But so what was she doing up until she was 30? Do you know?
I don't, honestly. She didn't like to talk about it too much. She didn't get along much with her mother, as well as her brother. Her mother put a lot of pressure on her to become a concert pianist. She took piano lessons when she was young. She was only telling me, and one day her mother was putting so much pressure on her that she got fed up, and she said, "I'm never doing this anymore," and she never did. She just stopped, and she exhibited a fair amount of talent, I guess, at least from what she said. I don't know. So she was impulsive in that way, and just made a decision that for her independence, she needed to stand by her decision and not pursue any kind of independent career. She did later, after she had married my father, get a job for a few years as a teller at a bank in Queens, near where we lived.
She didn't go to college?
She did not, no.
So she wasn't so much a career woman for that generation.
No.
That was unusual either way.
No, she was a homemaker.
She was a homemaker. So do you know where she met your father, or how they fell in love? Or did they fall in love?
I believe, yeah, they did. They were happy. They were happy together, relatively. It was a pretty peaceful marriage until he passed from a heart attack at the age of 74 in 1984. They were retired by then down in Florida, and they moved down there shortly after I graduated college.
Okay, so what kind of a mom was your mom when you were a little kid? Was she there making the cookies and the baking and all that? Or was she busy doing other things?
Well, she was basically a homemaker. Most of my childhood was in Forest Hills, Queens. And she never became a good cook, but she tried.
What were some of the meals? Did you grow up eating Ukrainian food?
No, it was pretty standard American fare, except for the occasional holiday when we would go to the local Chinese restaurant, and that was a big deal. But her mother was actually a good cook, but she didn't want to do anything like her mother. As I said, they were at odds quite a bit. There was a lot of tension there.
Did you know your grandmother, your maternal grandmother?
Yeah, I knew them slightly because we would go out to visit them every few weeks, and then it became kind of a chore because my grandfather had a stroke, and he was unable to speak. He could understand but not speak, and he was paralyzed from the waist down for the last few years of his life. So that was kind of my introduction to my mother's plight. Although she had Alzheimer's, he had more of a physical impairment from the stroke that he had. But it was kind of a parallel. But we used to visit them in New Jersey.
Was your mom resistant to holding on to the Ukrainian culture? Is that maybe where the rift between your mom and she started, or was it something else?
I wouldn't say that. I think her parents took to American values and traditions fairly well. They didn't cling to the old ways, and they weren't religious. They were Jewish, but they got a farm in Colts Neck, New Jersey, right near where I live, not far. In fact, I worked in Colts Neck at the post office there for a number of years. It's a funny coincidence that I ended up there. It's like a full circle. But she grew up with American values. That was not a problem. But she didn't want to do anything the way she was brought up. She was very independent. She was fierce about that.
And did she instill that in you?
To some extent. I was an only child, and she was rather overprotective, and I was kind of spoiled. And
kind of spoiled?
So, kind of spoiled. I wasn't spoiled so much. Well, let me clarify. I wasn't spoiled by, showered with gifts, and, they didn't buy me two of everything and so forth.
I'm only teasing.
But, right. But there was some clinging emotionally. There was a lot of attention, like kind of hovering. It became something that where I needed to create my own world, internal world, to a large degree, a world of imagination. I read immense amounts, even as a youngster. I had a library card at the age of 4. So I kind of escaped my mother's over-attentiveness by losing myself in a world of my own imagination, and then in other writers' imaginations. And my father, he enjoyed reading and was supportive of me reading, and we shared some books and so forth, but he hardly ever spoke. He just worked for a living. He supported us, and that was pretty much the extent of his parenting. Everything was left to my mother. So it became kind of a dominant thing for her to be always inquiring about how I was doing and what I was thinking and so forth and so on. And it could become overbearing.
Well, she didn't have her partner to converse with, really, or did they go off and do fun things together?
They did do some things together, but for the most part, he was a very quiet man. He would work very dependably and support us, and then he would be very tired, come home, eat dinner, watch some TV, fall asleep, and then the next day. It was a cycle.
Right. Was she a painter, or what were her interests that kept her engaged other than you? Do you know?
Not too much. She did have a few friends, but she had some difficulties relating to other people because she was very nervous and a little bit paranoid. I guess you could call it. I mean, that's an exaggeration. She wasn't literally paranoid.
Not clinically paranoid,
Right.
right? Okay.
No, but she was very nervous and kind of self-protective and overprotective of me as well.
Right.
So it could be a bit much.
What would you say to her? Or what do you ever talk to her today and say, I wish that we could have spoken about what you were experiencing, right? Often it's not till we're adults that we really realize what our parents were going through. What would you say to
Right.
her?
I would, I guess, ask her to share what she was so worried about all the time, and to give her support. I think she needed more support that my father didn't know how to give, and she didn't. I would encourage her to have more friends, to not worry so much, to not be so full. But I didn't know this at the time. Of course, when I was a youngster growing up, I was concerned with myself, with growing up. And when my mother's attention became overbearing, I was concerned with escaping that. So when I moved to college, it was a great relief for me because I was away from home and could become a young man.
Did your mom want you to go away to school?
Yes, they were supportive of that.
They were. Okay.
They were, yeah.
You have almost 100 poems that have been published in the Monmouth Review,
Right.
to an International
Right.
Journal of Poetry Therapy, and several in other literary magazines. What is it about poetry that you were drawn to?
Well, when I went to in my freshman year of college, I was fortunate enough to have a brilliant teacher who recognized that I had some talent and encouraged me greatly, and also turned me on to some really good authors who inspired me, such as Rimbaud and Rilke. And I found that poetry was a medium in which I could express myself, and it wasn't constrained like prose. There were a lot of books that we had to read for school, like Thomas Hardy's Return of the Native, for instance. I will always remember the endless heath that he had to go through there. I didn't like a lot of the books that we had to read for school, but when I became aware of the world of poetry, which I hadn't been before college, I found a whole world which was less bounded and less constrained, and in which I was able to express myself and explore my emotions and my search for what meaning there is in the universe. Not so much in a religious sense, more in a metaphysical sense, but the boundaries kind of become fuzzy, and it became almost religious in its way.
I bet. Well, religion has that effect on us, or whatever path you choose, right? You know that feeling, right. Whatever you believe in, that bigger, higher being, that it can transform your life.
The meaning behind it all.
Well, I'd like to hear the meaning behind what you've written about your mom. Could you read one of your poems, please?
Okay, The Science of Medicine. I drink a glass of wine to my mother, to memory. I try to remember a time she knew who I was, knew she loved me. Today she said she did not know me, said she knew I was not her son. They said it was the medicine.
My mom did not have Alzheimer's, but there were definitely the transitions, a period that she would go through, and eventually she didn't know exactly who myself and my siblings were, and I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I love that you you put it down on paper, is it still hard for you to read this? Or now that you've been through it, you can find not the brevity in it, but
it's been over 20 years, so it's less painful, of course. There's more of a fondness with which I remember her, and a calmness. It doesn't rattle me as much. I remember the good times as well as the bad, when it's not as concentrated with recent memories of her suffering, but more the whole picture of her whole life, which, was, for the most part, good. It was just the last 5 years that she had the problem.
So you also have one more poem to read, Rich, for us, and I believe it has something to do with the sea.
Yeah. This is a poem that's a little less depressing than some of the others.
But they were therapeutic. They were therapeutic, right?
But yeah. But this one, I think you'll find is rather pleasant in comparison. Bringing in the tide. I sit and read while she sits and dreams to music that plays over the sound of the ocean, like when I was a child and we were at the shore. That summer we escaped the pulse of the city and found the sun and the waves, the sky and the sand, where they should be, where they could be seen and worshipped like the parts of God that they are.
I think that part of the healing process, and I like that one a lot, that poem, Bringing in the Tide, but I think the healing process, you have to bring back those happy memories too, right? The ones that put a smile to your face, as well as the more somber moments and the teary moments, right? But I think that's all part of the healing process, and I think eventually the happier memories outlive the sad memories.
And they're all part of life, and it's a balance, I think one complements the other, actually, and it forms a whole.
What's a fond memory? Like when you think of your mom, what's something that will make you laugh or smile? Can you tell a story?
Shortly before they retired, I started going out with this girl who lived on Staten Island, and I brought her over for dinner to meet my parents. And during the course of the conversation, they talked about various things. And one thing was the girl, her name was Nancy, said that she didn't like animals. She didn't like dogs or cats or anything. And my parents always liked animals, although we grew up in an apartment, so we weren't allowed to keep them. But we always had a fondness for pets. And after the dinner, my mother was polite and everything, but she drew me aside and said, this is never going to work out. There's something wrong with that girl. That she doesn't like animals. And don't like within a few weeks, the girl and I broke up. She had this ability to pick up on certain traits of people. I wouldn't say it's psychic or anything, but she had a sensitivity to different people's personalities and so forth. And she knew that this girl and I were not right for each other. It was a clue, and she was like, absolutely no question about it. So that kind of struck me, that she was perceptive to that degree.
Yeah, I don't think many moms, or I should say, I don't know of many moms that like the first girlfriend for their son, right?
Yeah, well, she wasn't.
No, it's going to be good enough.
She wasn't the first girlfriend either, but she in general, she was supportive. No, she wasn't. I understand what you're saying, but she wasn't resentful or jealous or fault finding. Automatically, she was supportive, and she wished me well. Yeah, But she was perceptive about this particular girl that she was wrong. The vibes were wrong. What she said was wrong. It wouldn't work out. She was right.
Well, you should have listened to your mother, and I guess you did.
I guess so.
Oh, my goodness. Rich Fireman has been my guest on this episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother. A collection of his poetry, Constellations, is scheduled to be published by Prolific Pulse Press December 2022. Rich Fireman, thanks for joining me and sharing stories of your mom, Claire.
Thanks, Jackie. It's been my pleasure as well.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.